2024 to change the date of commencement of the Act to allow for further public sensitization of the scope and nature of the Act and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
No debate, you move? Are you debating? Okay. I recognize the member for Corozal North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, with regards to this bill in particular, we note with clear conviction that this is just an electioneering gimmick. While the bill itself has passed through the House, it's gone to the Senate. It was just a matter of the implementation. But, Madam Speaker, if I can gather from the information that we had received from our colleagues up north, clearly there was the kind of serious thought by stakeholders that this bill was being implemented without taking into full consideration the actual financial situation of particularly the people in the rural communities. Madam Speaker, I had forewarned this from the time that this bill was being debated, that while there is a need for us to improve on the governance of our local communities, our local villages, our local bodies, the mere fact of introducing a legislation to tax, this is a new tax, this is a new way of, this is a mode of going after the people of the villages. It was not the avenue to go. What has actually happened, Madam Speaker, and at the time that this bill was being discussed, is that when you look at the rubric, when you look at the wide scope of this net that was spread, you would go after the peddlers, you would go after those people making, selling on a daily basis to make a living. How would you now go back to your people and tell them, look, you have one Miss Jane trying to sell pudding, trying to sell snacks, trying to sell candies on a daily basis to survive, to take care of our family. How can you go to these people and tell them, look, you have to pay now because a legislation has been passed that is actually mandated that these village councils now collect funds from them. When I met with my village councils, I told them, look, probably we will be delinquent because I don't see how in the world we could go after these people knowing that they are making such a small money out of this, Madam Speaker, and yet we are going to tax them. It is not the best way to address things. Additionally, when you look at the way that this was implemented, particularly going to the shops, what you're actually doing is creating a trade license bill. It's creating a form of taxation to the businesses. We all know how business operates in this country. At the moment that you implement a particular tax, at the moment that you're starting to collect a particular license, any monies that you collect from any particular business, we all know that the businesses will not consume that additional cost. What do you think will happen? If they have to pay $100 for a particular trade license, you can make sure that that $100 being collected, the businesses will actually tax it on the consumers. So what is actually happening is that you are putting an additional weight on consumers on a food basket, Madam Speaker, that is already high, on a cost of living that is already at the skies, on inflation that can actually that we know and we can see that actually has no stop. It has no ceiling. It's going to continue. What I can see and I can tell you is that elections are coming right around the corner, and I think that it is not politically convenient for the party in government to actually start to move an ant's nest, particularly in the villages where life is already hard. I don't see how this party could have actually implemented a bill that sees our village councils going after the businesses and taxing them. We eventually know what will happen. The businesses will trickle down to the consumers. this before an election is not the best thing to do. But to the people in our communities, all I want to tell you is this. Don't you take the line, don't you take the hook that you will not be taxed. The bill has passed, the Trade Licensing Act is actually in full effect. It's just a matter of implementation. You will not be taxed now. You will be taxed after the general elections. That's my contribution, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, it is listening to the member from Corozal North. It is unfortunate that after so much discussions, both at the consultation level with the stakeholders, certainly at the House committee meetings, at which they had representations, that the member from Corozal North would still seek to misinform the nation. I really think it is an injustice, and it is a travesty, really, to the Belizean people. Madam Speaker, listening to him when he said, and he used the example, that the trade license would seek to tax the small business people, the people who make puddings and other small, things to be able to earn a living, that they would be taxed. That is far from the truth. Totally baseless. The bill is very clear in terms of how, the Trade License Committee, because there is a board that is going to be guiding the process, and they will be responsible, and there's a clear schedule, for business owners to be able to qualify to pay for a trade license. They have to have 600 or more square feet of productive space. So obviously the person, the tacos vendor, the pudding vendor, the person who sells their oranges and bananas, those persons, are not going to, be, required to pay a trade license. I mean, come on. Let us not forget the real intention of this piece of legislation. And this was all part of, our plan, as part of Plan Belize, to empower the rural areas. Madam Speaker, we know that communities require services. So the village council has to ensure that they take care of, collecting garbage, disposing the garbage. They have to make sure they clean the playgrounds and the football fields, that they do maintenance to their, to the public spaces. So it requires money. Now, what this bill seeks to do is that for those businesses, we have huge business establishments in many of our rural communities. And if you notice, I'm focusing on the rural because that's where, the member spoke to. You have big businesses such as Ladyville, you have Bella Vista, Hopkins, Placencia, and I can go on and on. Big businesses across this country where you have huge business establishments, and they do not contribute a single dollar to the village councils. So what we're really seeking to do is really to create a system where, these business establishments, by virtue of the productive space that they have, the business that they carry on, that they would be able to contribute, to the socio-economic development of the community. And let me be very clear. The trade license seeks to replicate the system that is used under the Liquor License Act, where the business owners would pay the money into the government coffers, and eventually it finds its way back into the village council's funds. So the money is not going to go into the Consolidated Revenue Fund, but rather into a temporary fund where it is going to be, trickled down to the village community. So, Madam Speaker, I do not want to prolong the debate, but allow me to say that really and truly the basis for the amendment to the commencement of the Act is really, to allow more time, as I said in my opening remarks, for sensitization, and education to the public, both at urban and the rural area, and to put in place all the, management structures and mechanisms that are required to ensure that when we implement, we have a smooth flow, and that, this process can run very smoothly and benefit directly our communities, both at the urban and rural level. Let me assure this nation and the members of this honorable House that there has been extensive work done on this bill, and I want to take the time out to thank, the many stakeholders who have participated and contributed to this process. The Belize Mayors Association, they have done extensive work. The Belize Chamber of Commerce, the Belize Business Bureau of Standards. We have, DAVCO and NAVCOs, certainly, many other NGOs and organizations that had a vested interest. We had participation from, both the government and the opposition side. So this bill has been through a very extensive process. And I also want to take the opportunity, Madam Speaker, to congratulate and to thank our staff at the Ministry of Rural Transformation. They have, begun the consultation process across this country, from Corozal to Toledo, all the way to Benke. And I will say to you, Madam Speaker, contrary to what the member from Corozal North is trying to insinuate, the majority of the people who come to the sessions and participate are very optimistic. And in fact, I will say to you, many of them are disappointed that we did not actually implement the bill earlier, because they fully understand and appreciate how this is going to positively impact, their communities. So, Madam Speaker, I want to thank my ministry, our CEO, Mr. Valentino Schall, our Director of Local Government, Mr. King, our Director of, Rural Transformation, Mr. Charles Galvez, and the entire staff at the ministry, the AG's ministry, and everyone else who has worked significantly and contributed to ensure that today we are where we are with the bill. And rest assured, the Belizean people, that we are here to work with you. It is part of Plan Belize to ensure that we can have, socio-economic development that is going to benefit all Belizeans. This is not about hurting our people, but rather it is about empowering our rural communities. It is about, making, especially, let me speak to that, the urban area, where we want to make the whole process of trade license certainly more transparent, more predictable, and we want to ensure that our communities and that the people benefit directly. So, Madam Speaker, I am happy that, we have gotten the support, and I ask every member in this honorable House to support this bill. Thank you very much.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to amend the Trade Licensing Act, Act number 19 of 2024, to change the date of commencement of the act, to allow for further public sensitization of the scope and nature of the act, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto be read a second time. All those in favor kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to amend the Trade Licensing Act, Act number 19 of 2024, to change the date of commencement of the act, to allow for further public sensitization of the scope and nature of the act, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Public Service, Constitutional and Political Reform, and Religious Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is the Senior Courts Amendment Bill 2024. This is also coming from the Attorney General's Ministry. This bill was introduced for first reading by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, but he's not here today, so I've been asked to move the second reading of a bill for an act to amend the Senior Courts Act, Act number 27 of 2022, to provide for notices and documents required to be served in relation to appeals from inferior courts to be served by public advertisement, and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Madam Speaker, again, I ask permission to refer to my notes as provided by the Attorney General's Ministry. And the Minister of Foreign Affairs, in introduction of this bill, went through some of these items, so I'll just be brief and do a recap. Madam Speaker, as you and the House are aware, the senior courts of Belize have been undertaking comprehensive judicial reforms to reduce the backlog of cases and to improve the delivery of justice in Belize. I certainly want to express this government's appreciation to the Attorney General, Mr. Anthony Sylvester Jr., and to the former Attorney General, Mrs. Magali Marin Young, for the work that they have been doing in this regard. This bill, Madam Speaker, emanates from a recommendation of the Criminal Justice Board of the Senior Courts. That board, Madam Speaker, is a multi-sectoral body including representatives from the judiciary, the police, prosecution, and the prison, established to undertake a comprehensive review of country's criminal justice system with the goal to develop practical solutions to address issues affecting the criminal justice system. The board, in reviewing the existing inferior appellate regime, unearthed an issue which required some legislative intervention and consequently wrote the Attorney General's Ministry requesting for amendments to the Senior Courts Act to be done to address this issue. This issue, Madam Speaker, is the inability of the court under the current laws to serve notices to appellants to inferior appeals, in instances where the court office has no address, physical or otherwise, for the appellants to be served, nor any useful means of how to contact them. Ordinarily, provisions for what is called substituted service of related appeals documents on an appellant would address this problem. However, Madam Speaker, the existing provisions for substituted service would not address the issue due to lack of personal contact information on the files. Section 128 of the Senior Courts Act allows for notices and other documents related to appeals from inferior courts to be served electronically by registered post or by delivering or leaving the notice at the person's last known address. Even though the law provides for alternative methods of service, Madam Speaker, for Section 128 to be utilized effectively by the courts, it would still require the court's office to have possession of the relevant contact information for the persons to be served. In many instances, this is not the case. In view of the current circumstances, Madam Speaker, this Senior Courts Amendment Bill is necessary to allow for the enlargement of the provisions for substituted service in Section 128 of the Act by public advertisement. The bill introduces a new subsection 2 to Section 128 of the Senior Courts Act to allow for substituted service by way of a newspaper of general circulation, on a Senior Courts official website, or through a local media outlet. With this amendment, Madam Speaker, the Senior Courts will be able to effectively deal with the backlog of inferior appeals and ensure adherence with the Constitution of Belize, which, pursuant to Section 6.3, affords appellants the right to have notice of the date, time, and place of an appeal, and to a reasonable opportunity of appearing before the court. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You just moved the
Yes,
question.
Madam Speaker, I just move that this bill be moved now.
Honourable members, the question is that the bill for an act to amend the Senior Courts Act number 27 of 2022 to provide for notices and documents required to be served in relation to appeals from inferior courts to be served by public advertisement and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto be read a second time. All those in favor kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think that.
Bill for an act to amend the Senior Courts Act, Act number 27 of 2022, to provide for notices and documents required to be served in relation to appeals from inferior courts to be served by public advertisement and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Committee of the Whole House on Bills.
Honourable members, the House will now resolve into a committee of the whole House to consider the bills that were read a second time. At this juncture, I ask any visitors in the gallery to leave during this portion of the sitting.
Bills for third reading.
I recognize the Honorable Minister of Rural Transformation.
Madam Speaker, I rise to report that the Committee of the Whole House has considered the Trade License Amendment Number 2 Bill 2024 and passed it without amendment. I now move the third reading of that bill.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to amend the Trade Licensing Act, Act number 19 of 2024, to change the date of commencement of the act to allow for further public sensitization of the scope and nature of the act and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto be read a third time. All those in favor kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to amend the Trade Licensing Act, Act number 19 of 2024, to change the date of commencement of the act to allow for further public sensitization of the scope and nature of the act and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
Recognize the Honorable Minister of Public Service.
Madam Speaker, I rise to report that the Committee of the Whole House has considered the Senior Courts Amendment Bill 2024 and passed it without amendment. I now move the third reading of that bill.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill for an act to amend the Senior Courts Act, Act number 27 of 2022, to provide for notices and documents required to be served in relation to appeals from inferior courts to be served by public advertisement and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto be read a third time. All those in favor kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Bill for an act to amend the Senior Courts Act, Act number 27 of 2022, to provide for notices and documents required to be served in relation to appeals from inferior courts to be served by public advertisement and to provide for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto.
I recognize the Deputy Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
Recognize the Leader of Opposition, Member for Mesopotamia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if you'd allow me before I move to my matter of national importance, to wish you Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, all members of the House, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, all Belizeans, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, especially the people of Mesopotamia and all of the constituencies which I have the privilege to lead. I also would like to wish those who celebrate Kwanzaa and Hanukkah happy holidays as well. Madam Speaker, my issue is the plight of educators in Belize, Madam Speaker. 4 years of failure in paying teachers allowance and increments, Madam Speaker. The PUP government of Belize has demonstrated a reprehensible failure to meet its obligations regarding the payment of teachers' commuting allowances, hardship allowances, and increments, Madam Speaker. This is very important to me. In the UDP, as far as candidates, members of the Central Executive, members of the National Party Council, Madam Speaker, the opposition, we have many teachers, Madam Speaker. My mother was a teacher, and this is the consensus that I want to bring to the attention of the PUP government of Belize, Madam Speaker. After the PUP 2020 election year Plan Belize manifesto promises of 20% salary increases in the face of COVID-19, Madam Speaker, it is not as if these promises were made blindly, Madam Speaker. The PUP government knew what they would inherit as far as a decimated economy due to COVID-19, Madam Speaker. The PUP knowingly made promises they would not keep, Madam Speaker, of a 20% salary increase. We all know what happened. Teachers, along with other frontline workers and public officers, took a 10% salary cut when they needed their hard-earned wages most to deal with COVID-19, Madam Speaker. And after 13 years in opposition, Madam Speaker. 13 years, 13 long years. The People's United Party government spent 13 long years in opposition. Why? Why has it taken the Briceño PUP government 4 years to deliver on their promises and solve the problems of the teachers, Madam Speaker? I proffer it is disconnection, tone deaf. You would surmise that after 30 years as an elected member of this honorable House, the Prime Minister's capacity would be, at optimal. He would be the elder of the House and wise and getting things done, but it has been the exact converse, Madam Speaker. He proves over and over again that his capacity has expired. What we see in the Briceño administration, Madam Speaker, is the rot of the old guard who are entrenched in their old ways of managing the affairs of the people. The old ways, Madam Speaker, of dither, delay, deceive, and never deliver. Bureaucracy rather than betterment, Madam Speaker, has been the hallmark of this Briceño administration. You would think that with 30 years of experience as Member of Parliament and 13 consecutive years waiting to form government, that this Prime Minister and his administration would not take another 4 years to deliver on their promises to give the teachers what they are due, Madam Speaker. Why does it take that the BNTU has to overwhelmingly vote, Madam Speaker, to take industrial action for the government to do what is right and deliver what was promised to the teachers? Because this government simply does not care about the struggles of the Belizean people. They only care about themselves and their cronies, Madam Speaker. They prove it over and over again. The Right Honorable George Price had the mixed economy. The Honorable Prime Minister has the fixed economy. The economy that only works for Kenny Zeng with that wretched UB Hospital $6.9 million land acquisition as proof, Madam Speaker. The fixed economy for Haitham Diab, Jaime Briceño, Chris Cowie, Larry Flowers, I heard he got paid $7 million before a house was built. I'm sure the honorable member from Kayo South can disabuse me of that information. Tycrob and a chosen few make up this fixed economy, Madam Speaker. This administration simply does not care about the teachers, Madam Speaker. Teachers who are the backbone of our society's educational system. Teachers who, for the last 4 years of this Briceño administration, continue to be severely underappreciated and neglected despite their crucial role in shaping the future of this nation, Madam Speaker. These allowances are not luxuries, but necessities, Madam Speaker. Necessary compensations to help teachers cope with the harsh realities they face in their daily lives, Madam Speaker. The government's refusal to fulfill these financial commitments reflect terribly on its priorities and its compassion for the challenges educators endure. Teachers in Belize face numerous hardships on a daily basis, Madam Speaker, considering the highest cost of living ever, exacerbated by heartless store owners who the member from Lekai spoke of to the media a week or so ago, who engage in price gouging, undeterred by the government's hard talk and refusal to enforce consumer protection laws. Teachers often must travel long distances to reach their schools, sometimes in remote and underserved areas just to fulfill their teaching obligations, Madam Speaker. With the exorbitant cost of fuel, with the lack of access to transportation, these teachers are left bearing the brunt of an increasingly expensive commute, Madam Speaker. Thus, the commuting allowance, which is meant to ease this financial burden, has been delayed and is often paid inconsistently, Madam Speaker. This is not just an inconvenience, it is a direct affront to teachers who are already struggling to make ends meet, Madam Speaker. This government's failure to honor this allowance is a clear sign of its lack of compassion and regard for teachers and their financial realities, Madam Speaker, which oftentimes more are in duress. In addition to the commuting allowance, Madam Speaker, teachers in Belize also face significant challenges due to the highest cost of teaching materials. Despite the government's promises to improve the educational system, many teachers are forced to purchase their own materials to ensure that their students, who they love so much, receive the quality education that they deserve, Madam Speaker. This includes everything from textbooks to paper and other essential supplies, Madam Speaker. The hardship allowance designed to help offset such costs has not been paid on time, Madam Speaker, leaving teachers to shoulder the financial burden themselves. This is not fair, Madam Speaker. This is not good governance. This is not a caring, compassionate government that was promised in 2020, Madam Speaker. This not only impacts the teachers' ability to teach effectively, but it also places an unnecessary strain on their already tight personal budgets, Madam Speaker. It is particularly unfair that in a time when the government continuously touts the strength and success of the nation's economy, teachers continue to suffer from a lack of financial support, Madam Speaker. Teachers continue to suffer under this Briceño administration, Madam Speaker. The Prime Minister regularly claims that the country's economic growth is unparalleled, is robust, is stronger than it has ever been in recent times, Madam Speaker, and that citizens are benefiting from these improvements. However, Madam Speaker, according to all of the teachers that I have the benefit of working with, Madam Speaker, and teachers that I don't even know, Madam Speaker, the reality is starkly different, Madam Speaker. Teachers, like most day-to-day Belizeans, are struggling, Madam Speaker. They are struggling with inflation. They are struggling with a stagnant income, all the while being told that the economy is thriving. This contradiction between the government's public narrative and the lived experience of teachers demonstrates why over 30 years the PM has turned into a tone-deaf, disconnected dinosaurs whose policies are to pay $200 million in one day to a billion-dollar corporation, while the needs of the people who are educating the nation's future are callously ignored and dismissed, Madam Speaker. Teachers are under tremendous pressure, Madam Speaker. This pressure is compounded by the government's failure to ensure that teachers receive their due allowances and increments in a timely manner, Madam Speaker. I have seen this Prime Minister come into this House, Madam Speaker, and pass supplementary for $100 million, pass payouts for $70 million, Madam Speaker, to special interests. But it has taken 4 years and a threat of industrial action, strike action, for a letter to be written of promises, which I will not hold my breath, Madam Speaker. Teachers are being asked to do more with less, Madam Speaker, and it is unconscionable that the government continues to dismiss their needs. Education is the greatest investment that we as a nation can make, Madam Speaker. The more educated our people are, the better our economy. Unless we believe in the colonial mandate of some of our colleagues who wish to have our people illiterate, impoverished, and dependent on the political directorate, so that they remain easy prey, Madam Speaker. Ensuring our educators are given the support that they deserve, that they need, is essential to the development of our nation, Madam Speaker. The failure of this PUP government to fulfill its promises regarding the teachers' commuting allowance, hardship allowance, and increments is beyond a deep injustice, Madam Speaker. It is not only a financial hardship for educators, but also a demoralizing message about how little their work is valued by this People's United government. As I am giving this speech in Parliament, they are laughing and making a mockery of the process of advocacy, Madam Speaker. If this government is serious about its claims of economic prosperity, it must show that it is willing to invest in the most valuable asset that we have, our teachers and our students, Madam Speaker. The teachers of Belize deserve better than to be left to bear the weight of an economy they are told is thriving while they continue to struggle, and the billionaires and the cronies continue to prosper, Madam Speaker. The government must take immediate action to correct this injustice and provide teachers with the financial support that they deserve, Madam Speaker. The Minister of State in the Ministry of Education for some time now has promised teachers an annual grant for materials and supplies, which is yet to come to fruition, Madam Speaker. Rather than freezing allowances at the ending of the school year, the opposition demands that the government continue to pay these allowances and allow teachers to use it to prepare their classrooms or purchase uniforms, Madam Speaker. With regard to gratuities and pensions, there has been a blame game going on for some time between management's Teaching Service Commission. But, Madam Speaker, I must remind this government they have an entire ministry that deals with digitization. We are in the digital era. Thus, appraisals and increment forms should be completed and stored digitally, member from Cayo North. We're not there under the UDP. This is the PUP now. It is your show, sir. You asked to serve. You are not doing us a favor. You asked for the job, Madam Speaker. With the same priority that the government can find $3 million to SMART for software services, SMART which the Prime Minister, brother, and family members own, along with a certain billionaire, it could have long paid a software developer to devise a system to deal with teacher allowances, salaries, and gratuities for teachers when they retire, Madam Speaker. The recent offer letter dated December 9th, 2024, by the Ministry of Education with regards to paying outstanding increments and allowances is nothing but a crisis management reaction, rather than a meaningful and proactive solution to ensure that teachers get what is due to them, Madam Speaker. While I concede that this problem is an age-old problem that transcends political partisanship, Madam Speaker, this PUP administration has had 13 years to prepare the solutions and deliver on their promises to do better. Stop blaming Dean Barrow. Stop blaming the UDP. It has been 4 years. The excuse and honeymoon period has expired, Madam Speaker. Over 4 years in office, and the PUP government has not made any concrete effort to solve this issue, Madam Speaker. The issue of increments and allowances not being paid stems from several things, Madam Speaker. An old and antiquated bureaucratic process, a lack of human resources to process these increment certificates and allowance forms, the timely submission of documents by managing authorities. Madam Speaker, it is shameful that the People's United Government can spend $2.9 million on a well rig, $3.2 million for designing a phantom hospital, $6.9 million for a land that they did not need, Madam Speaker, and another $3.1 million to Smart SpeedNet for Microsoft Office, but they are yet to find the monies to retain the services of a software developer to develop a program for the submission of appraisal forms, increment certificates, retirement documents, etc., Madam Speaker. So that active as well as...
I'm going to interrupt because I've heard the figures of 3.1, I've heard SMART, I've heard software a couple times. So they, and you are reading, but yes. I'm going to ask you, your point of national importance was when the government is going to pay these various allowances?
It is the overall challenges that the educators are facing as far as the increments, allowances, and the problems and systematic solutions that we have that I'm going to get to, Madam Speaker.
You're not going to get to it. I think we've heard all of it, and it's very lengthy. I want to ensure that we're not getting into repetition. I've heard the server situation, the software. I've heard it a couple times. Okay. So let's get to what the ask is. I've been told that the Deputy Prime Minister will address your point of national importance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I said, Madam Speaker, we hope that the suggestions and the things that we are pointing out will be addressed so that active as well as retired teachers can get what is due to them in a timely manner, Madam Speaker. You know, my mother, as I said, was a teacher. She fled Belize to escape poverty. Thus, this is an issue near to my heart, and it hurts to see our educators in this country being robbed of their dignity by this laughing set of buffoons, Madam Speaker. I implore.
No, member. In this parliament, you're not allowed to do that, man. You know that.
I did not direct my comment to anyone, Madam Speaker. I did not say the government. I did not say anyone. I did not say.
Member, let's wrap it up, shall we?
I implore the government to bring long-standing, lasting rectification to the challenges of our teachers by doing the following things, Madam Speaker. Retain the services of an individual or firm to develop a software with shared access between managing authorities, Teaching Service Commission, and Treasury to filing the documents, Madam Speaker. Allocate finances to various managements to hire the additional staffing needed to process increment certificates, retirement, and allowances, Madam Speaker. Hire additional staffing at the Teaching Service Commission, which is also a key body where teacher employment and welfare is concerned, Madam Speaker. The Ministry of Education has informed various managements that financial grants will be dispersed to their accounts by the government by December 20th, and in turn, they are to process all outstanding increments and allowances for teachers, Madam Speaker. School closes today, and a lot of the managers and their teams go off on holiday as well, Madam Speaker. Without the extra staffing, without tax calculations, with record keeping and filing not being up to par, it will be a miracle if managements across the nation will be able to process the increments and allowances for thousands of teachers over the course of 6 days to meet the December 20th promised solution, Madam Speaker. The opposition believes that without putting in place the aforementioned infrastructure, the government's December 20th promise is nothing more than a duplicitous, desperate attempt to dissuade the union and its membership from strike action schedule for January 2025, Madam Speaker. I close by saying, Madam Speaker, the government has no excuse. The Prime Minister has been in Parliament for 30 years, served in the Musa administration as Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Lands. The Minister of Education has been in this honorable house for 26 years, Madam Speaker, and has been Minister of Education under the Musa administration, as well as leader of the opposition. They have had decades amongst them to identify and rectify the problems before us in regards to our teachers, Madam Speaker. I pray that they demonstrate to this nation that they are not just extinct dinosaurs whose time is long gone, urgently needing to be replaced by young leaders with the vigor and political will to overhaul a broken colonial system that continues to oppress and suppress. I pray my honorable colleagues disabuse me of my notions and lead as elderly statesmen who can leave a legacy behind that they solve the problems of our teachers that previous administrations did not, and put in place systematic improvements that will see the betterment of our educators and the enhancement of our education system. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Deputy Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, did the Leader of the Opposition get permission from you to read that lengthy speech? Diatribe. I know he's praying for teachers to a miracle. We're in December, and the miracles happen a lot in December. But the miracle he's praying for is not going to happen. I know he's praying that come January, teachers will demonstrate and you'll have industrial action and all of that. That's not going to happen. I know you are praying for that so you can go grandstand and walk with them like you did with the cane farmers one time.
And I even know the cane farmer.
Not even knowing it. Just hang around and try to get a little benefit from all the action. That's not going to happen. Regrettably, the Minister of Education is out the country on the business of the government and the people of Belize, so he can't be here to respond. He can't respond adequately to you. But we've had and it's Christmas, and we don't want to get into all that nastiness. We've had a great relationship with the teachers. We have had that, and we will continue to do so. I know the member for Kyle South wants some trouble. It's Christmas, man. Christmas officially start because we have GST-free weekend, right? That's right around the corner. Everybody gearing up for that, including teachers and all Belizeans who are looking forward to this wonderful opportunity. We've had a great relationship with the teachers, right? Great. We just finished recently first of its kind education clinic, where over the course of an entire month, I believe, teachers along with the government, but particularly the Ministry of Education, conducted nationwide clinics in every single district to provide an opportunity for teachers to get access to solve their land problems, get access to and apply for land. Get access to the tax service so that the tax department can explain. And in particular, the tax department could have brought a little gift to them to inform them that pretty soon, I think it's January 1st, instead of demonstrating January 1st, teachers and lots of workers all over this country will benefit from the increase in the tax exemption figure. So if you're making $29,000 or less, you won't pay any taxes. That means if you're making $2,416 a month, you won't pay any taxes. That's happening on the People's United Party government. They're not going to demonstrate against that. They are going to celebrate that, because you're talking about at least $1,000 in the hands of thousands of Belizean workers, including teachers. And more importantly, we solved the problem the United Democratic Party was unwilling to solve. Because you come here like Columbus, like you have all the answers, and you discovered America, but you didn't. Because we were right here, long before he came. Because this government recently solved that 16 or 18-year-old crisis that was facing teachers in particular. We could not sign a collective bargaining agreement with teachers and public officers for 16 long years. How many years under UDP? The vast majority. All 13 under the UDP, because the then government refused to agree to pay the 30% pension that are due teachers who were working in denominational schools and who were struggling to get their pension because the churches could not pay. So you had teachers for decades being unable to collect their full pension upon retirement, because these schools, these denominational schools, teachers get 70% of their salaries from the government. The churches pay them 30%. And when it's time for retirement, they should get the 70% from government and the 30% from the churches. That wasn't happening. So you've had hundreds, if not thousands, of teachers who upon retirement were unable to get their full pension benefits. And that held up the collective bargaining agreement for almost 18 years. And this government was able to solve that problem. This government has taken on that responsibility to spend, I don't know how many million, probably $10 million a year, additionally, to ensure that all teachers, no matter where they work, whenever they retire, they will get 100% of their pension benefits. We are not trying to hurt teachers. Far from it. Each of us recognize that if you see any successful person in this country, they would have had a master teacher, 2 or 3 or 4 during the course of their lifetime. We wouldn't be where we are without great teachers in this country, and we've been blessed to have them. And we are trying to keep them as fast as, because the truth is we have been losing them. And we are trying our very best to keep them and make sure that they get what is theirs. And so, coming to the problem of the allowances and the increments and all that stuff, Minister told the nation that this is a problem that we inherited, but we're not going to cry about it. We're going to solve the problem. And we've been working hard at it. But the minister has given a full commitment that we are going to work even harder on it to make sure that come December 20th, teachers who have not gotten their increments, who have not gotten their allowances, and in the case of increments, I don't know how long, you have teachers, what, going back 6, 8, 7 years who have not gotten that. We are going to make sure that on December 20th, all those persons get their monies that are due to them. And that's a very, very firm commitment. So I'm sorry to disappoint you, sir. It's December, and it's a time for celebrations. It's a time to take care of the families. It's a time to wish each other well. It's a time to share love and great tidings and greetings and all the good things that come with Christmas. It's not about demonstration. That's not going to happen. This government, the minister has made it very clear that no BNTU is going to march against no government under his stewardship. We believe that. We've worked very closely with him and with the BNTU, and we're going to make sure that December 20th, they get what they're supposed to get. I'm sorry to disappoint you. It's not going to happen, so you're going to have to find help somewhere else. But not. I don't know where you're going to go, But you're going to have to find some help somewhere else, but not at our expense. No, you can't get help from over there because you see what he did. The former Minister of Education, the member for Colette, is supposed to be the shadow Minister of Education. So this is a matter that he would have taken up, but the leader of the opposition get first bite at it, and he decided to, oh dear, that's where you're going with this. I rest my case. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the member for Albert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is the season, Madam Speaker. This is the season of love and joy and peace and a little patience. But Madam Speaker, before I get into the matter of national concern, I wanted to share with this honorable House a vision that my father, Leroy Tega, often articulated to me growing up. And I quote him, Madam Speaker. He said that Belize is the new Jerusalem. It is where Almighty God will express his Ummah, meaning the brotherhood and sisterhood of humanity. Madam Speaker, for a long time, I could not see his vision. It seems that we're quick to anger. We're quick to tear down our own, to beat up, to speak ill of each other. Madam Speaker, I certainly was no part of that. Seriously. Madam Speaker, but in the wake of these accidents, road traffic accidents that we've seen that have affected communities in Cayo and Kikaka, even San Pedro, Madam Speaker, I saw a glimpse of his vision. People like Passy Haylock, Madam Speaker, who initiated just $1 to help the victims of the road traffic accident in Benke. And people like Selene Villanueva, the chairperson of Kikaka, who has used our social media platforms to keep us, our entire country, engaged in how we can be our brother and our sister's keeper, on how we can be an example of this vision of being the Ummah of God, the brotherhood and the sisterhood of man. I say this, Madam Speaker, because in the case of both accidents on the Western Highway and on the Northern Highway, I knew some of the families personally. And I know the pain that comes from losing a loved one, Madam Speaker, but most importantly, the pain, which I cannot imagine, of losing a child. Or young people, Madam Speaker, who are the future of this country. And I heard you, Prime Minister, member from Orange Walk Central, about the importance of us being an example. You know, many times as I make my way to Belmopan for these meetings, I see government vehicles flying by on the highway, not mindful of the rest of us who use the highways. They've been reckless. I have seen vehicles with no lights on the highways at night. Madam Speaker, we have laws, and we have good laws, but the issue is the enforcement of these laws. The ability of the Ministry of Transport, and I'm sorry my colleague is not here from Stand Creek West, to ensure that the teams that we put on the highways are adequately equipped to deal with enforcement when there is a violation of the laws and regulations we have on the books. Madam Speaker, I'll go a little further. In many jurisdictions, including Belize City, you can't get a license plate, you can't get a license sticker. In some cases, they're not the IDs available to print licenses. You're operating on a receipt, Madam Speaker. And I'm not saying that this is a recent occurrence. For the last 2 years, my daughter has had a receipt because she cannot get a license plate. I share that, Madam Speaker, not to remove our personal responsibility, but when you give a team a job to do, you must equip them. And they should be able to recognize quickly when there is a violation. I have seen vehicles in front of me with no license plates allowed to pass by a checkpoint, and that cannot be acceptable. So when we talk about fixing a problem, let us start at home. Let us start with putting in a better system in place to monitor the reckless driving of blue plates on the highways. It's a fact. Let us take on personal responsibility to report when we see a license plate on a vehicle and the vehicle has no lights, trucks, buses without lights on the highways. Let us also not drink and drive, not text and drive, and be sure that not only that we are mindful of our lives or the lives of the persons that are in the other vehicle that's approaching or behind or in front, but the lives of the pedestrians on the highways, because many times when this meeting goes on late at night, Madam Speaker, and I'm heading home, there are people on the highways with no reflectors walking on the highways, and we don't see them. So when we revisit these laws for motorcycles and helmets, let us also consider stricter penalties for seatbelts, stricter penalties for those who drink and drive, stricter penalties for people who walk on the highways with no way of us seeing at night that there is a human body along the highway. Prime Minister, I am sure that your government, as you said in your statement to ministers, a statement this morning, will seek to address this matter. It is urgent, and we need to deal with what is happening at the Transport Ministry and the Transport Departments, where it relates to the necessary tools for drivers and the necessary tools for people who are expected to enforce the law. The breathalyzers cannot be on a shelf. They have to be placed where those checkpoints are placed, especially, Prime Minister, at this time of year. So I take this opportunity to thank the many Belizeans across this country who holds the families of those who lost loved ones in their hearts. Those who gave $1 and those who are able to give $1,000. Your love and your generosity to humanity does not go unnoticed. We must be our brother's keeper, and we must be our sister's keeper. I take this opportunity, Madam Speaker, to wish all of us a happy, Merry Christmas, and a very safe holiday season with you and your families. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, I pretty much agree with about 90% of what the honourable member from Albert said, which is what I just said earlier this morning in my address on the Tragic Road traffic accident or incident. So there's nothing to argue over here. We agree with you. And as I also pointed out, honourable member from Albert, is that in many instances, laws in itself could only go so far, but it also requires us to do a mindset and to be able to be more responsible of our actions on the road. On the issue of the traffic license and the tickets, it's something that has been plaguing the ministry for some time. And yes, it is embarrassing because it's something that should have supposed to be easy to address, but for some reason, it could not be they couldn't get it done. But I had a meeting with the minister and the acting CEO, Shal, I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they pointed out now that has been addressed. They got a large order, but because there was such a backlog, that quickly ran out. So another large order is already supposed to be in place to be able to catch up with all that was needed. So guilty on that one. That should have been addressed a long time, but I think we have addressed it by now. So again, Madam Speaker, I commend the honourable member from Albert to be able to get up and to speak on this matter, a matter that's beyond politics, something that's affecting all of us, and that all of us are still reeling from that shock. At the same time, like her, I want to take the opportunity to wish you, Madam Speaker, good health, and to you and everyone in this house, to all the people who are in Jock Central and all Belizeans across this country, a blessed Christmas. I know we get caught up with the commercial aspect of Christmas, but also there's a spiritual part. And this is a time for us to be able to reflect where our God, our Creator, sent His only Son to save us. And that is the ultimate sign of love and care and sacrifice that can be done. And we need to follow from that example. Earlier on, DPM was whispering to me. He said that one of the most tragic events could happen is when a father or a mother buries their own, because we expect them to bury us. And so we can't fathom the pain that they're going through. I hope that they can know, they would know and can realize and could feel the love from all of us for them, especially this Christmas time. So I wish you all a blessed Christmas, a happy one, but be safe. And that 2025 will bring new things and exciting things. And I wish Belizeans all the best in 2025. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Members, perhaps I was a bit too patient, given the season with that first matter on adjournment. I can commit to you that won't happen again. Members, it would be remiss of me if I didn't also extend to all of you my best wishes for a safe holiday season, to you, your families, and of course to the staff and their families over this holiday season. I also take the opportunity to thank all of you and so many Belizeans who have sent me such encouraging words of support, and really to the many cancer survivors who have actually given me some really good tips to manage this journey. And so I feel encouraged by that, and I look forward to getting through this bump, if you will, and to continue working. With that, I wish all a very safe holiday season, and I now put the question on adjournment. Honorable members, the question is that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor, kindly say aye. Those against, kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. Thank you.